welcome back to another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. Today, and I said I'm not going to mess this name up, I am joined by Schwartzen Precil, and his book is Empower the Hero Within: How to Thrive as a Student Leader in a Post-Pandemic World. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. Thank you for having me and allowing this to happen. Thank you. I'm excited.
Well, and I'm gonna tell you, when I read your book as a boy mom, I have girls, but I also
Okay.
have a boy, one
All
boy and three girls.
right.
Um, I was so proud of you when I read your book. One of my biggest fears as a mom of an African American son is the will he come home XYZ night for a variety of reasons, which we don't even have time to get into. But he's 28 now
Okay.
and he has three boys. So now Nana got three boys to worry about. But I'm so proud of you because I'm glad that you used your voice and your experiences to really be a part of this movement to help others. So I'm so proud of you for that. Um, I'm gonna say I'm auntie. I'm only 52, so I feel
All right.
like I'm 32.
Yeah. Come on, see. Yes, yes, yeah. Let's do it.
So why don't
Mhm.
you tell our listening viewing audience about your background?
Sure, sure. Originally, I'm a Haitian American, born in Brooklyn, New York, but I was raised primarily in the Bronx and Staten Island. And so it was just really essentially me and my brother um, navigating through foster care. I grew up in the system of foster care, New York City foster care system, pretty much exposed to anything that you name that you think is part of the foster care system in New York City, particularly. Seen it, done it. And so, a lot of my writing process, which happened way later in my life at 24, was because of those moments that I remember feeling alone, trapped, right? Not feeling like I had a voice. And essentially, just falling into the stereotypical black boy, disenfranchised communities, that kind of system, right? School to prison pipeline, foster care to prison pipeline, all of those stigmatized systems that essentially we know come from a certain historical background of disenfranchisement. I had those stories when I graduated college. I was like, man, what am I going to do now that I have a degree that I had no business, quote unquote, getting at one point because I didn't know what I was supposed to do outside of playing basketball. That kept me away from the streets earlier in life. Obviously, I got caught up in the streets during middle school years. I mean, literally, New York City, if you're familiar with them, public schools look just like prisons. I knew more prisons growing up, names of prisons growing up, than I did colleges. I wasn't exposed to education means, right? I was raised by three different foster families at one point. The foster mom that finally adopted me, she had her first child at 15, right? And so in that experience, even though she was older when we met, that experience kind of limited her onto exposure for her educational background. She was married to a man who was a tyrant. He was very militant, right? Came from a strict background. And so I exposed myself to negativity just to escape what was going on at the house because I didn't know who I was. Identity issues early on. And it's nothing short of what like our sisters go through every day, right? I grew up with two sisters who also face those same identity issues, mother, father, things like that. But it's different when it comes from a man. And that's kind of, or a young man, let me say that, a young black man at that, when it comes to capturing certain narratives that you don't hear because black men end up in prison, we end up not being able to voice ourselves. It's a different kind of feel when you hear it from somebody who's gone through the trauma, but also gone through the healing, right? Not staying in that place of, right, fights, right, anger, right, holding weapons, right, violence, gangs, right, all of that. Then I took the stereotypical way of using basketball as a means to get out the neighborhood, right, try to, buy my house kind of narrative, right? All these things kind of led me down a path of just still not knowing who I was. And it led to some mental health battles in college. Yeah, I got a scholarship, but I also had extreme suicidal thoughts, suicide ideation, tried to take my life. The Lord led me to himself. and was able to kind of redefine who I was and wanted to be in the world after I found out that men after 25 can kind of still be alive. And that was the motivation behind my first book. You have my third one. My first book was Be Your Own Hero. This was kind of this liberation tool. My second one was faith-based. Later on, was able to write that. And then, of course, the latest one, the most notable one, is Empower the Hero Within, which again, allowing yourself to feel empowered in the things that in the choices that you make.
Oh my gosh. So you said so many different things. So number one, I too one day had decided that I did not want to be here. And it wasn't that I was caught up in any system. So I'm in Chicago.
Okay.
I really don't know anything about New York school system. So I'm definitely intrigued. And now I'm wondering, is there a TV show that I could watch? Um, so I can get a little insight before I do some research, but I did not know that that was the state of New York. I know from a healthcare system that there are some racial disparities and other things that happen. So I'm going to have to definitely do some follow up on that. And I'm like, you wrote 3 books? Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you took your um, trauma and turned it into something beautiful that not only helped you heal, but also can help others heal. And I don't know about you, when I wrote my first book, I experienced some extreme healing as a part of writing the book. But when others read it and they can feel what you were experiencing, that's when you know you are in alignment with your assignment, you're in alignment with your purpose. And I'll tell you, as I was reading the book, and I have to show you a few pages. So this is one of the pages, and you can see here I wrote, "Oh, this is good." And that's because I was highlighting and underlining different things. And you actually made me think, right? When you started talking about different movies that stigmatize the path that Black men go down, I was like, whoa, it it's no matter. I mean, it makes sense why some men and women, young men,
Yeah.
choose violence because they're exposed to it and it becomes their normal, as opposed to just something that they see on TV. And I have to tell you, my husband says he's a TV aficionado because he watches a lot of TV, but he talks about how art imitates life. So what we see on TV is literally imitating what's actually happening in the real world. And I think when you look at TV from that lens, like, yes, this is entertainment, but this is really somebody's life right now. And what can you do to help those individuals uh, make a detour from
Yeah.
that life? And speaking of detours, in the book, you tell us about being caught up, doing some things that young boys do. Talk to us about that because I really want that young mother, and I say young because I had my daughter, I was 1 month before my 19th birthday. So there has to be a young mother or grandmother who's listening to this or watching this video podcast. Share with her a little insight to your journey.
Absolutely. Before I do, I want to hit on the art part of it. I think you probably married an intelligent man when it comes to what he said as far as art imitating real life. I remember there was this, Trevor Noah, the TV host, when he had his TV show and all that. He asked T.I. about why is it that Black people always talk about violence, video vixens, things like that, and that nature. And T.I. expeditiously, shout out to T.I. when he said, well, art is just a reflection of what we experienced growing up. And so if you take us out of that experience, maybe we might produce something a little different in which you do get that, right? Not all of our narratives are exactly the same, right? It's just the majority at a certain point between the 90s and the early 2000s, it was a lot of that hip hop, that violence, right? We had, Boys in the Hood narrative. We had these horrible endings to these narratives that we didn't know, right? So I just want to highlight that, and to know that some of us are reshaping the narrative, right? One of my art pieces that I'm going to be working on, let me showcase it here actually, is essentially I'm my dad. I'll talk about that in a little bit, how I met my dad and all that. But I do want to hit on some of the aspects that boys grow up with, right, between different ages, right? A boy is going to look up to their mom, their dad. If they don't have that balance, you're gonna feel it early on because their bodies change, right? Our influences in between the ages of 6 and 8 are very critical, right? We were mommy, about 5, 6. You get to that first grade, second grade, we start to, okay, like, if somebody tests me, and again, it's different from girls. Little girls kind of testing the waters with each other. For boys, if you're not physically that person you're gonna get stepped on or depending on what kind of environment you grow up in, right? I'm not saying in the house, but in school, you're tested. And that makes you want to grow up faster because you don't want to be a punk, right? The words mean a lot. Just like I believe words build worlds. If someone calls me skinny or fat or ugly, I might take that and believe it. And then it might be so numbing that I not call it back to them. Even though they didn't learn it at house, they learned it from a peer, from someone who's around them that, they want to, again, combat, and it becomes combative and things like that. And we don't have a lot of options. That's where I'm in the field while I'm introducing more words to our younger people early on in life. I've gone down to the sense of like college students, high school students, middle school students. Now I'm working with our K through 5 students as well when it comes to it. And essentially by the time they're 11, 12, essentially they the testosterone hits, puberty hits, right? They're going to need a figure. They're going to need a figurehead. And for me, it was a coach, right? For most of our young boys, I hope it's a dad. We do hope, right? But it could be an uncle. It could be a positive role model, somebody other than what they see on TV, or a rap star, right? Especially in our influences today. In our culture today, all the kids know about the famous streamers, the black streamers, Casanat. They're always talking to me about that, right? They don't talk about, the doctors, right? They don't. Lonnie Johnson is a great engineer that I always highlight every year during Black History Month. He's the inventor of Super Soaker, but he got 55 other inventions, right? We got and because for them, history is, can be boring, but it can be fun. This is why I write books, right? As a Black author, representation is important. They have to see themselves, especially for boys who are going to be men one day. They have to have a vision for their lives, and they have to see. If they don't see that, unfortunately, they will see the Ricky story in Boys in the Hood, or the Fridays, in those stereotypical movies that paint the picture for them, that they don't believe that they're going to be something outside of a hip hop artist or a sports player.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You said so many different things, and you kind of triggered me a little bit because you talked about that adolescence. I remember that day when them showers got real, real long. I said to my husband, I said, what is that boy doing in that shower? And then he just started laughing, and I was like, oh, I understand now, but I need him to get himself out that shower.
Yeah.
So it's so funny because as he has little boys and he's watching them do what they do, I'm just sitting back like,
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, I do want, even though you talk about it in the book, talk to us about that day where you were standing in front of that judge and your life changed.
Yes. It is this path of school to prison, right? The influences, the social influences. Even if there was a positive model, which I didn't have any, I don't know if that would have been enough to make me believe that there was going to be some kind of miraculous sign for me to be free. So essentially, my life at that point was juvenile delinquency. I was stealing. 6th grade, first fist fight, starting food fights. 7th grade in New York City in 2006, it was a felony if you threatened to blow up school officials because of 9/11. And so I threatened to do that. I was angry. I was in and out of detention hall. So it was a progressive thing. It wasn't like the judge like, all right, well, let's just don't. I was progressing into a way that was very chaotic and sporadic because the influences in my foster home was ran like a group home. I seen guys, older guys, punch out policemen, punch out cop cars, break out school windows. When they asked, what do you want to do when you get older? He said, I want to be a drug dealer. I want to be a kingpin, right? I want to be a big homie. Those were the things that we idolized and that got respect and didn't get you beat up. My brother, who was a year older than me, stuck to the books. He was a very skinny guy, brilliant in his mind, right? But I seen him get, punked a lot. And it was too much heart, too much pride in me to feel like I got a punk. So when I'm standing before the judge at 14 years old, the life was going to be prison. Like I didn't see myself outside of that. And I tell my wife that. She's like, well, why not? Because the television, I seen Prison Song, right? I seen Baby Boy when Snoop Dogg comes home, right? I seen this narrative that this is what Black males do. This is where we go. This is your rites of passage in a way. You want to be a big homie, you got to go to jail. You got to do this. And again, by God's grace, like there's nothing else outside of God having his hand upon my life at that point, giving me a second chance. And so the judge was sentencing me to either 2 years juvenile detention, and the facility was called Bailey Seton. They do your psychiatrics, you get the medicine, you still go to the school to get your high school diploma, but essentially it's a prison for kids. And they could have tried me as an adult at 14 years old. At that age, at that time, they could have. Or they said 1 year's probation, but he got one more time to do something. And probation means you check in with a PO, you can do a drug test, right? You go to check in, you're home by a certain time, you can't hang out with the gang homies. It's a lot of restrictions. And so my foster father at the time, again, by God's grace, because he was a mean man, he said, I'll take him home, judge. And that was that. That was the family court situation. That was the point where my life was like, I have this opportunity. I see the light. If there's a God out there, at the time I wasn't a believer, glory be to God. And he opened my eyes. If there's a God out there, then this must be part of what his redemption plan is for my life. Because shortly after that, the warden, Mr. Warden, he fell ill. So he's in and out of hospitals for the next 6 years. And for me, I just used the game of basketball to escape all the streets, rebuild my identity, right? Get under a coach, right? Realign myself with good morals with my team basketball. And it was all she wrote. You can fast forward that, and I'm a pro athlete in the next upcoming years,
Wow. You know what? I think about my high school years, which were way before yours.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband and I actually went to high school together. And so we graduated in 91 and we reconnected in 2008. So we had that, time frame where we didn't see each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about today, his experience in high school and my experience in high school, it was almost like we went to two totally different schools.
Yes.
Because everything that he was talking about, I had no clue, like none. When he talked about being in the gang, I was like, "You was in the gang? What's going on?" I didn't know all these things because we met freshman year, and I guess I was so into just books. And then when I turned 16, and I was in the choir, always loved to sing. But when I turned 16, I was like, I'm getting me a job. My mother is a single parent. I want to buy a Coach purse. And so I just kind of stayed on that path. But it just amazes me that we went to the same school, same time frame, and had two totally different experiences talking about coming to school and how he was harassed by security guards and almost was kicked out of school and all these different things. And I'm like, was I like walking around with blinders on? But I realized that our young Black men have an experience that can go left so fast that if you don't, have lots of care and support, and my husband, I call him like the drill sergeant.
Yeah.
Because even as adults, these adults don't play with him. Like they literally have this level of discipline because he was there. But he also was previously married, so the kids were, living in a different household from him, but he made sure that he was a present force in their life. And I believe that it doesn't matter whether it's a blood relative, by marriage, that or if it's a family member, community member, you can have an impact.
Mhm.
My bonus children tell me to this day that they saw that I was a college educated woman and they wanted to do the same thing. And so they all went to college. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that I would have such a huge impact on them. I was just trying not to be mean, right? Because I grew up with a stepmother who, I'm not going to say she was mean. I just don't think that she was as personable as I felt that I wanted to be. And
Yeah.
so just to hear you talk about the importance of having those positive role models in the kids' lives, we both have a lot of work to do.
100%. 100%. Yeah, boys we're drawn to what we see, right? They say, in the narratives, ladies or young ladies are drawn to what they hear, right? Boys or men are drawn to what they see, right? And we see what we see, right? It's part of like our human makeup, our chemical makeup, how we develop, right? How we interact with the world, and both men and women, boys and girls, all need safety, and part of our socialization process has to do with safety physically, right? And for young boys, their safety is their number one, their body, the protector, things like that. It's part of why we join gangs, right? It's not necessarily we want to be cool, fit in. We don't like what comes with that lifestyle, right? It is, it comes with its territory, doing things that you feel like you have to for the sake of the family, and that's part of the process. But again, there's aspects of family ties, right? There's an aspect of, right, if we're family, like blood related or not, right, there's an aspect of care, and I love how you said that when it came to care, because that's how I approach education now. I grew up with a militant foster father, where back straight, he'll smack you upside your head if you slouching over and all that. Very militant. He would say all the time, "This is dictatorship." He dictated everything: what time we ate, but how much shower we got, what time, how much food, bed the lights out by 7:30. I mean, militant for 6 straight years before he got into the. And so when we finally, like when he fell ill and all that, I couldn't process the way, and I just honestly, I used a lot of that for basketball, which is why I'm disciplined the way I am. I still wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, get my prayer time before I hit the gym. It's part of my makeup now, right? And he, at 8 years old, he showed me what it meant to be a man. There was some good things, but most of it was bad. But the good thing was it was a sense of discipline. It was an instillment of discipline, because his background was, his father grew up, in the South and things like that. And so it's a lot of that kind of trickles down. So what I do, I try to this care coach approach. He built no sense of connection. So care is an acronym. CARE. C is for connect, right? A is for assess or ask questions, right? He wasn't very curious of us. And so there was no connection. It was, we are fostering you. And he made it clear. I'm not your father. We called him Mr. and we called him Mrs. until the day he passed. Right. And so growing up as a teenager, we had to fake it till we make it, like, oh, and that messes up your mind as well. But the R is for reinforce. We reinforce a skill, something that's positive. And E, all right, CARE, we always leave with a sense of encouragement. And that's what I do for like professional development trainings, folks in education, the SEL space, parent educator. That's what I do now to develop a model. Because again, for me, connection don't come as easy when you haven't been influenced by people who care. I was more fostered than I was raised, and that's kind of why I lack connection and have my relational traumas the way I did. I have a divorce as well under my belt when I was early into my 20s and everything. So that's common. Again, we fight the stigmatized. God can redo anything that He pleases.
And you know what I love? God can restore all. I love that you said that, because I think growing up, old school, we went to church.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother and my grandfather were very loving, but we had discipline.
Mm-hmm.
But to this day, I wake up knowing that God is the head of my life.
Praise God.
and I can do all things through him.
Amen.
Even on those days where I'm like, oh, I don't think I can do it.
Yeah.
But then I have to remember that I can do all things.
Amen. Amen.
So
No.
I'm glad. Again. I'm so proud of you. You have definitely encouraged me,
Mhm.
and I said this to you before we started recording, and I want to say it again because by the time this episode airs, I will have done a few things. One of is being a commencement speaker for 8th grade graduation, and I know that it was God
Praise God.
who brought us together because I'm able to use some concepts
Yes.
or really the messaging from your book that will help me reach these 8th graders. Because, I've been doing a lot of research, right? I'm an
Mm.
old person, not really old, but I'm older.
Mhm.
What can I do to impact these 8th graders on this day during my one opportunity? And so every day, God is just showing me so many different things. And this book is one of them.
Praise God.
So thank you
Mhm.
for putting this out into the world. And I have to introduce you to, and I'll do it obviously once we're finished, but I have to introduce you to someone who's also on the East Coast, who also wrote a book and is really into helping young Black men because we need it. I'm trying to get my husband to honor his promise. One of his promises was to go back into the community to help young boys. We've done like career days at schools,
Yeah.
to kind of talk about everybody is not going to be an NBA player, NFL player. The percentage is very low.
Yes.
Um, but there are other things you can do to first be happy
Mhm.
as well as live a life that is fulfilling. So we all have a lot of work to do because there's so many kids that need us, and especially kids who don't have the family unit structure in place. We are responsible for filling that gap
Mhm.
because we made it on the other side of our stuff, so we're responsible for giving back.
Amen. I 100% agree. It's a sense of what I call social responsibility, right? I do believe, historically we come from tribalism, right? We come from tribes in Africa, right? Before, right? So they try to start our history in the 1492 when Christopher Columbus sailed the blue, right? We know that we have historically, been part of tribes, and part of that tribalism means, right? There's a rites of passage for young people to be grown up, right? In a way that's healthy, in a way that's village oriented. And I believe after post 2020, we're entering into a time where we're starting to kind of have more than just conversation, right? There's starting to be galvanization, right? A unifying of people, right? Tonight I'm meeting with Oakland's mayor because of the shout out to Dope Era, their clothing brand, and Mr. Fab, the CEO, the activists. We're getting to a point where they can be exposed to young people, can be exposed to the elders of the community, learn from our ways, right? Both men and women coming together. Also, there's something that you said. You also shared the same narrative of my wife, where we grew up on the same block. When I got moved to Staten Island, right, there were gangs, right? I was with one of the biggest blood families in Staten Island at the time, and she grew up across the street, and she didn't realize it was gang activity. Meanwhile, we grew up in the same block. Now, we didn't know each other growing up, but I knew her sister. Her sister was cool with my foster sister, and we grew up together, but I never knew who she was. It wasn't until 3 years ago, and that was back when I was 8. Almost 20 years later, we meet in church. We meet in church, and she didn't realize how much activity was going on. Either her parents did a darn good job raising her and keeping her from that, right? Or that was just God's plan of protecting her for when one day she would meet her husband. But also, she also had a good noggin on her head. She was raised the right way, as far as like how you had a dream of like of you're gonna be working, right? Now you're a doctor, right? Like you had a vision for yourself. Boys really don't. I haven't heard I asked my brother, how come you chose books instead of like the path that we took, us as gangsters and all that. He's like, it was an escapism, right?
Mm.
He didn't have a way to like, all right, here's what college, because we grew up the same way, so there was no means of like college access support. There was no means of that. And my wife went to the same school as my brother. They graduated 2 years apart and everything. And so part of like God's gift as far as having ladies or young ladies have a vision for like, I'm going to work or go to college. My wife had a vision to go to college. She understood. I'm like, regardless of what she was also in like band, cheerleading and things. She did extracurriculars. So when I share my high school experience and she shares hers, even though we grew up around the same, it is black and white. It is totally different. I mean, she didn't know anything about violence. She didn't see
Nothing.
anything.
When I say I didn't know nothing, when he
Yeah,
talks about events
yeah,
that took place, I'm
yeah.
like, what? When?
Yeah,
Like he talked about a fight at a basketball game, and I
yeah,
was like, because I've always loved sports. I am a lover of sports. Yeah,
yeah,
probably a little too much.
yeah,
But when he talks about the fight at the football game, and here in Chicago back in those days,
yeah.
all the high schools played at this place called Gately Stadium, right? So he's like, "You don't remember that fight?" And I'm like, "No, maybe I left early, but I will tell you, I was the oldest, and my mother kept me in the house, so I was able to go out, but it was she had some tight reins on me because she said, and
Yeah,
you'll find this when you have your own children.
yeah.
Kids don't come with an instruction manual, and with the first one, you're kind of learning. And then, like my sister, she was able to do everything. Like she was out there in them streets. I was not. I was at home.
Yeah.
So, what does the future hold for you?
Yes, great question. So I'm launching a children's book called Heroes Help Each Other on Juneteenth. Hopefully this is out before then. If not, you can find it on I have online bookstore. I have a website and everything. And so I'm launching, I'm also helping other aspiring writers become published authors. And so I'm in the self-publishing field versus the traditional publishing field. So traditional publishing was really the dominant thing of how you get a book from a writer to a hardcover to a softback to ebook and all that. But then the game changed in 2016. I became an author in 2019, but 2016, 3 years before I became an author, something called self-publishing erupted, and now we're in 2025 now or 2026 soon, right? And now we have a lot of self-publishers, but they don't know the route. I teach folks how to do the route. I do webinars. I'm in professional development, and I've got other books. Again, one of my goals, again, going back to my father. When I learned out who my father was, I learned that he was a Haitian, not just an American. He was Haiti through and through. My mom and dad were born and raised in Haiti. When I found them later on, my dad has 12 kids. My mama was not one of the 8 wives that he had. My mama was actually the side chick, to be honest, in all transparency. And so learning that history, learning that I was like number 7 out of 12, and I'm cool with the siblings. I'm cool with the majority of siblings. I've always had a sense of romance, in a sense of like Romeo and Juliet is like that romantic thing, right? Tyler Perry has a few. I wrote my own, and I'm writing my own called Fallen Man Fantasies. It's kind of this tragedy story, love story. I won't give it away too much, but it's an essence of the black version of what I would call Romeo and Juliet, the Montagets and the Capulets and all that. I want these families for black folks to get creative, right? We have this opportunity to get creative. Yeah, we use real life stories, but we also, it's a sense of fiction, right? A sense of understanding. It's a sense of novelty that I would love to continue to do. So I'm gonna just continue to stay in my lane in the young adult space until I have kids, right? Then I'll be an adult, I guess.
Life will change
Yeah,
then.
exactly. Yeah, because my brother has children. He's only 1 year old. He's 15 months older than me, and so he's an adult, I guess, because he got kids and all that. But for me, I enjoy the fruits of my wife and everything, being able to enjoy life there. I'm in education still. I still continue to speak. More than interested in connecting with me. They are, but that's essentially what I'm doing. I do public speak. I do my tours, author tours, and yeah, that's where I'm at.
I love it. Now, look, you don't have to rush and have any kids.
Thank you.
Our
Thank you.
youngest daughter, who is 26,
Yeah.
doesn't have any kids. She got her bachelor's degree. She's working on her master's degree. She's traveling. There is no right time to have kids, right? Because again, they don't come with an instruction manual. My oldest daughter, who is currently 33, she's special needs, and I had to come to terms with the fact that God gave her to me because he knew I could handle her. But I my youngest daughter, I told her, just live your life, because once you bring kids into the picture, the dynamics of all things change. So enjoy life, speak, travel. You're never gonna have everything you need, right, to take care of kids, because there's always gonna be something. You know how people have all that money, but they're not happy. So just enjoy life and continue to pour into each other, so that when you bring that baby on this earth, baby or babies, you can pour into them and you can keep your legacy going beyond what you went through.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. For real, I know that's the mom in you talking and everything. I appreciate that. Why? Because I'm surprised you grew up in church, because most church folk is like, when we gonna have some grandbaby, when we gonna have some kids, and they are. I'm like, guys, we was long distance for a long time. I was telling the wife, me and the wife have agreed that we want to wait. We want to build our marriage. We want to build each other up. I gotta learn to love her the way Christ loved us. She's gotta learn the same way. And it's no rush. It's no rush. I'm under 2 years married, so you are literally the first person. I'm not just saying that to say, good. Take your time. It's okay to take your time. Don't rush. Things like people like, oh, so you're having kids, because we're heavy in the church, and so yeah.
Well, and you know what? Let me just say this from growing up in the church. Today, my grandfather of my four grandparents is the only one that's still alive. He's 104 years old.
Wow.
And my grandmother and grandfather were married for about somewhere between 75, 78 years. But I'll never forget, it was 1999. I announced that I was buying a house. And my grandmother was like, a single woman should not buy a house. And I was like, whatever, Granny, because I'm buying this house. I don't want to live in this apartment anymore. So then 5 years later, it was 2005. I was like, hey, I like the other house that I had, but now I'm going to move into another house that happened to be next door to where my uncle was living. And my grandmother was like, well, I guess you're not married still, so you might as well just go ahead. But I said that to say that I believe that there is some legacy that is brought forward that is not necessarily the right path. I believe that as individuals, you have to really get to know yourself and then proceed right with the next steps, but by having a plan. And I think in the book you talked about passion
Yes.
and positioning and purpose. And
Yeah.
again, it's not going to be perfect because nothing is perfect. But I think that, and I know a lot of young Black professionals that are in their 40s that waited to have kids, they enjoyed life so that when the kids came,
Right.
they were able to show their kids all these wonderful things. I think about all the trips that I was able to take my kids on because I had experienced them. I remember, and we got to wrap up, but I
Yeah.
remember us going on a trip, and they came back, went to their mom's house, and the other kids said, "You didn't go on a trip. You photoshopped yourself into a picture, right?" Because those kids only knew Chicago.
Right.
And these kids had been on cruises and out of the country and had a passport. And I have always believed that you want your kids to have a better life than you had. But first, you need to live.
Right. Yeah.
So,
100%. 100%. That's the be the change that you want to see in the world, right? If you want to expose your kids to those things, you do it first, right? That's I 110% agree. If they don't, and it's not their fault. They don't know life outside of their own backyard. They know their 4 blocks. They know the neighborhood barbershop, salon, right? Supermarket. That was me for 17 years until I got out of my neighborhood and my scholarship brought me, and tried to go back, but it was never the same. And this mind wasn't meant to shrink back down to my environment, because it's still the mentality of with the poverty mindset and things like that, and limitism, and and just again, that's why it's important to have excitement, right? A lot of times our neighborhoods aren't incubators for excitement, passion, right? But I know for me, the purpose, my why, my anchor is going to take me to wherever God has called me, and it's going to align. I might not get every step of the way perfect. No one has except for Christ, right? But it's a learning experience that I'm gonna teach to the next young people, next generation, to my kids. Yeah.
I love it. So before we leave, please tell our listening, viewing audience where they can find you. This episode will definitely air after you have kicked off all the things you just mentioned. But the good thing about that, this is your accountability to getting those things done because you just put them out there in the ecosystem, right? So when it does air, they
Yes.
will already be able to see all the things that you're going to mention here. So where can they find you?
Sure. My website is Hero Leadership Group. Hero Leadership Group. That's the founder of it. And online bookstore. They can go to books by books by.com slash and then my name Schwartzen / Precil. That's my online bookstore. They can follow me on Instagram at Schwartzen.Precil. I'm on YouTube as well, LinkedIn. You're more than welcome to reach out to me, and TikTok. I've been the fond of TikTok to in order to like get involved with the kid. I'm not on social media like to just browse and all that, but if it's a way of engagement, my TikTok is at Shway Motivation. Shway is my spoken word name, and I do poetry as a form of activism, in a way that delivers something powerful in a digestible way. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, before we go, you need to read this book called Rest is Resistance because you're doing a lot. Still want you to get some rest.
Thank you.
Auntie said, get some rest.
Okay.
Because as a person who spent a large part of my life doing, I left out the being. And so now on this other side of 50, the being part of me is really allowing me to operate in my assignment. So I'm not saying, stop. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
read the book, Rest is Resistance. You're going to like it. You're going to
Okay.
like it.
No, I definitely appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being on 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. I'm so glad that we got you on. I love the fact that we have people from all walks of life, from all across, not only just the US, but also the UK, Africa. So
Mm.
I'm just blessed to be the vehicle that can present authors to the world. And I'm going to do this as long as I am physically and mentally able to do so.
Mhm.
52 Authors, 52 Weeks is going to be here to stay.
Yes, yes. Your platform is extremely impressive. Again, it took months for me to book it. And so I know you are in demand. I'm so thankful to have a presence like you, be able to elevate my platform and talk about me, invite me on. And again, like I said, I'm going to invite other authors as well, as I'm helping them publish their books.
I love it. I love the work that you're doing. Keep it up. I love it.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. Yeah.
All right, everyone. This has been another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.